the True to Form podcast. I am your host, Audrey Neff, and I am beyond excited. That's probably an understatement about today's guest, who is the one and only and the amazing Dr. Gretchen Frieling, also known as Dr. G. She is an international recognized Harvard-trained triple board certified dermatopathologist with over 18 years of experience in the industry. She is the founder and owner of G-Face MD, which is a multi-million-dollar medical aesthetic practice with locations in Boston and Cape Cod. She is also the founder of G-Face Academy, the Soil Your Skin Collection, and Face It Virtual Live. Beyond that, and she's an amazing human being, and this is just another reason why, she's also, on top of all of that, a global educator and trainer for many of the pharmaceutical companies, including Galderma, Merz, Benev, many more, and she's been featured in numerous media outlets, including Yahoo, Oprah Magazine, Elle, Real Self, Bustle, MSN, Shape, NBC News. Oh my gosh, Gretchen. So when I read all of this, and the reason I wanted to read your bio is I'm sure most people that are listening already know who you are, but I think it's always fascinating when I go and I pull someone's bio, and even though obviously you're a good friend of mine, but when I read your bio, I'm thinking to myself, like, how do you do all of these things? So I'm so excited to have you on the show. For those of you all who do not know Dr. G, you're going to get to know her on this episode. But beyond all of the incredible achievements that she has accomplished at a very young age, to be honest, she's also a dear friend and an incredible human being who I learned so much from and continue to learn so much from. So Gretchen, welcome to the True to Form podcast.
Wow. I was like, this is wild to just hear all of this, but thank you so much for that amazing introduction. I'm so happy to be here. Obviously, you're on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I'm just honored and so excited to chat about whatever we want to.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. And something Gretchen mentioned when we first hopped on is, what are we going to talk about? And, for those of you who know my style, and I know Gretchen, you're just like this too, we can really just talk and go with the flow and just see where the wind takes us. I really think that's what this episode will be doing here. But before we jump in, I do want, just because you have such a unique background, and to my knowledge, you're also like the only dermatopathologist in the industry, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So just because you have such a unique background, I know our listeners are probably wondering, like, how did you land here in aesthetic medicine now with the 2-location, and we'll certainly get into this with the 2-location practice, and obviously we can go into how you've scaled that too, but just like talk about your journey and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah. And I know you said keep it short, but the reality is it's not very short, but I will tailor it, just because there are other podcasts I've spoken about my background, and it's something that I'm proud of, but I wasn't always proud of in aesthetics. And I think a lot of people harbor their secret power, that they're not sure that that's their secret power or superpower. And this was mine. And I started off in a family. My dad is a vascular surgeon. My mom's a lawyer, and always just very academic, a very academic household. I was also a dancer. So splitting my time between dance and then studying to go to medical school was just my goal. And ended up going to medical school after a quick dance stint, was in Juilliard for a little bit, and decided that wasn't the path for me. Whereas my sister actually danced professionally in the Atlanta Ballet and is now also a physician, a radiation oncologist. But I just went straight to med school and did that at the University of Florida, go Gators. Did my undergrad at Florida State, so grew up in Florida. And then I matched at my #1 program that I loved at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and Harvard Medical School up here in Boston. I haven't left. I do love New England. I hate it sometimes, but love it for the most part. So then did my training up here in pathology. And as a pathologist, which many people think the stereotype is just a nerd that sits in a room and reads under a microscope, which is true. I'm somebody who has a photographic memory. I like to know the answer. I like to solve problems. And I do like to talk to people, but what I thought at the time, and I still think this is true, is I like to choose how I use my voice and who I want to talk to. I don't have to just talk all the time, even though maybe now I do, I don't know. So love pathology. It was a great work-life balance. Finished my residency, and then I did my fellowship in dermatopathology at the University of Vermont. I actually had an interesting situation where was accepted to MD Anderson Cancer Center. It's the #1 program for derm path in the country, and you compete against dermatologists and pathologists. And I received that spot. But at the time, my husband and I decided we didn't want to move, both of us, to Houston. He didn't want to move. And I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to do this. So I actually withdrew from the program a month before I was going to move there, had nothing, decided to teach and train medical students and pre-med students. And then I got accepted to Vermont. So went there for Derm Path, then came back. See, it's not a short story, Audrey.
Please go as long as into detail as you want. I'm listening. I'm fascinated.
So I went to Vermont, then found out I was going to have my first baby in Vermont while my husband was in Boston. You know, all of these crazy situations, right? So then finished my fellowship, came back to Boston, worked as a dermatopathologist for several years in a private lab, and I wasn't offered a tenure faculty position because they didn't have space for that. So I was offered as a contractor to read biopsies, which at the time I was like, why am I not good enough? How do I not get this full-time offer? Why am I not salaried? But it turns out to be the biggest blessing, because on the side, not only could I work at more labs reading biopsies, there was one lab that I only read nail biopsies for fungus. So this is like what I did. And I decided, though, you know, I'm just going to feed that entrepreneurial bug. I dreamed that I wanted to open either a lab or an aesthetic medical practice. And I was blessed that during my fellowship in Vermont, I was in the dermatology division and was exposed to injectables. Not a ton, but some, you know, it was an intro to cosmetics. So I had some training there. And I said, you know, I want to do this one day, I think. So I dreamed about G-Face MD. My initials are G and F, and then face, and I'm an MD. Okay. And then dreamed of the logo and designed it. They're all trademarked now. And I haven't changed them, which you can always change these things. It's not the end all be all. But I opened in one room in the back of a nail salon in 2017. And it was just me. And within a year, it exploded. And I started expanding and growing and building. And here we are working on our third location to open in 2025. And so G-Face MD is the parent company. I have, it's my parent company. I have a skincare company that's separate, So Your Skin, which I've cultivated through all my creative energy. I love creating in general. And so it's a beautiful product of that and my love for treating and nourishing the skin. And then I'm a lifelong learner. So I wanted to create a conference that doesn't exist. So this is the combination of ultrasound and cadaver anatomy, which was the first of its kind. There are a lot of offshoots now, but there's nothing that is hands-on that's totally 100% ultrasound focused with cadaver anatomy out there. And then I have my training academy. So there we are.
I love it. And I've listened to other podcasts you've been on, but like to just hear you face to face go through, I feel like, first of all, you need to write a book one day, Gretchen. I feel like
it's on my list.
It's really, really unique and inspiring. To go back to what you said, you said your dad was a vascular surgeon, your mom was a lawyer, and your sister was an oncologist now. I believe that's what you said.
Radiation oncologist.
And I like putting all these things together in my head of like how you get molded as a person. And I think it's really cool, because when you think about, okay, so you came from, your parents had a medical background, lawyer, which is obviously, there's a big business side of being an attorney, and then dancer. Well, I can totally see that, because you just have a personality that like radiates from miles and miles away. People just gravitate towards you and they want to be around you. And you're obviously a really, really well-known speaker now too. I just think of like all these things and how they mold someone along the way. And I just think it was really cool to actually hear that, because I feel like you're a perfect blend of all of that together.
Well, I think it's so crazy, because the people that see me now in my professional life have no idea you have to take the time to get to know these people. I have no idea who I was, no idea my upbringing. And sometimes I forget that. And, I'm like, wait, but they don't know where I came from. They don't know I had dance backgrounds. They don't know all these interesting things, which is wild, because it is a separate life. And I love podcasts like this, because it takes you back, where you started, those building blocks of how you get to where you are. And I do want to write a book, because I think you have to hear someone's story in order to be able to relate to it and understand the struggles, understand what happens behind closed doors to get to where you are. Right.
Yeah. No, I love it. I really think a book should be on. I know you're a busy person, but I think that it would make for a phenomenal book. And obviously we'll go into because there's so many things I want to go into now. But when we go back to how, and I found it interesting because you had this entrepreneurial bug that you had, and it was between either opening a lab or opening up a medical aesthetics practice. And when I heard that, it's kind of funny because those are two very, very different types of businesses. So what, at the end of the day, obviously there was a decision that had to be made. At the end of the day, what was it that made you kind of decide aesthetics?
Well, obviously looking at the growth of the aesthetic industry and the anti-aging industry, not just the non-surgical injectable side of it, is last year it was $65 billion. And this includes the surgical part, and aesthetics is billions as well. And it increases so exponentially each year. And when I looked at labs, the way dermatopathology labs were changing was that essentially the derms were being consolidated, bought by huge corporations, and the labs were then within dermatology practices, and they were hiring dermatologists who could also see patients to then be also dermatopathologists. They had to be, double boarded. It just, the growth wasn't there. It actually looked like it was decreasing, even though everybody needs biopsies and everybody needs a biopsy read. I didn't see, number one, how I could scale it to potentially sell in the future. I didn't see how it would be that exciting for me. I mean, anything that I build is exciting, but there was so much more to an aesthetic practice with using my creative energy. I'm an extremely creative person. I have tons and tons of ideas all the time. And through a lot of personal discovery and work that I've done in the past 12 months, I've learned that I am, and this is a good thing and a bad thing, but I'm a confident optimist, and the most extreme confident optimist. And what does that mean? That means, to me, I have the confidence to do anything, and I think anything is possible. And sometimes people will say, well, you're not living in reality. That's just not possible. You can't do that. I'll say, watch me do it. And that was going to be the title of my book. It may change now, but it was going to be just watch me. And that's been part of my life, and I think I wanted to start something that, honestly, at the time, I didn't realize how drawn to it I was and how I would use all of the cells in my body to create this, because I thought going into aesthetics, you have your core specialties. So you have dermatology, and then you have plastic surgery, and I didn't fit in anywhere. And it's ironic because growing up, there were things I just didn't really fit into, and I was bullied, and it's like, where is my purpose and where is my place? And I didn't fit in now, yet again. And I'm like, okay, why am I always this unique unicorn that just decides to create something that's never been created before? I wanted to hide my background. I didn't want people to know I was a pathology trained dermatopathologist. I didn't want to not fit in that way. So I just put that on the back burner, and I was a physician starting this practice. Then when I started to realize the superpower behind being a dermatopathologist, being able to understand and explain things to people on such a different level with such different detail, and now even reinforcing to me that people want the science. We go to conferences all the time, and it's just the same thing said over and over and over again. And I always ask, why? Why do you do what you do? Why do you just believe what someone's telling you? Ask the question and figure it out. And as I built my team, I would say within the past 2 years, people would come to me and say, how do I do this? Or what do you think of this? And what do you think of that? And finding the right way for this to be delivered to someone, with respect is, I actually don't know the answer. We're both on the same ground level here. I encourage you just to go look it up and come and report to me, because we will both have to do the same amount of work. And lo and behold, it empowered them to figure it out. It, uncovers, and people figure out they love to learn as well. But I think that's also, I guess I don't know how I got there, but just the uniqueness of my background has played over and over and over and over again, and really shown itself in many different ways. And then looking at my skincare company, so you have to start somewhere, and you have to have resources to build products from scratch. And I'm not going to sit and stand in a lab and mix ingredients physically and actually do that, but I wanted to work with someone who I could choose the ingredients. I could really customize them to the best ability, to my best ability without being the chemist. And that's what I was able to do, and using my chemistry background, my dermatopathology background, I was able to make something really unique. So
wow. Okay. I've just been like writing a novel over here because there's so many.
Writing my book for me?
Yeah, basically. There's so many ways I could go into. So I want to back up a little bit because something you said really, really stood out for me. So for actually a couple things. So the first thing I wanted to go back to is when you talked about, when I asked you the question of between a lab or an aesthetic practice, what made you, make that initial decision? And something that stood out for me, because this is what a lot of people don't do initially, is you actually had like business acumen about it from the start, which I feel like a lot of times that's something that comes later on. They get into an industry because they're like, oh, I just want to go into this industry. I want to open up this type of business without actually doing the research of what actually the trajectory is of whatever that specific vertical is. So you did the research, which I found fascinating because I feel like most people that open up practices typically don't go and do a lot of that research up front. They'll typically, if they're coming from the hospital and they're burnt out and they're opening up a practice, a lot of times the business acumen takes a back seat and they don't really realize that it is like running a business at the end of the day. So first of all, I found that fascinating. But the thing that I really loved was when you came into the industry, you said, or you were kind of questioning, where do I fit in? Because you talked about, and we all know that there's like the core, we have the core physicians and then the non-core. And so just like you said, there's oculoplastic, plastic, derm, and so on and so forth. And how you said at first, like you were trying to kind of like hide who you were because you wanted to fit in, when in reality, and it's true, you are a unicorn. And I think that that's what makes you so special. And obviously you've really kind of embrace that now, but you obviously didn't start at that point. And obviously when you start doing things, especially just like how you put it, you said you're an extreme confident optimist, which I also love. And people will question you and question what you're doing and question why you're doing it. And so if we go into this for a minute, because I think that this is something that a lot of people struggle with when they have an entrepreneurial bug in them and they want to do something bigger than what typically people around them are doing. Naturally, you're going to get pushback from, even in some cases, people that are close to you. So go into this. I want to hear more about this. Like, how did you handle this? Like during this entire journey of deciding, okay, I'm going to open up a practice. Now I'm in this industry that's the majority of people are core, and how do I kind of create my identity?
Yeah. It didn't happen overnight. And okay, so this is something I haven't talked about on a public platform. So I was open for about a month and really getting busy, answering my own phones, everything. And I get a call from the Medical Board of Massachusetts, like my physician MD license, and it was a lawyer on the phone. And is Dr. Frieling there? This is the lawyer from the Medical Board of Massachusetts. And I was like, whoa, what did I do? I mean, I'm like an extreme rule follower. I do everything by the book, hence, now medical, business mentorship, SOPs that are 500 pages in, at length. And I am a rule follower, period. And I sat down, I was paralyzed, and he goes, we've had complaints. And I was like, what? And this was the first time I was like, whoa, what have I done here? We've had complaints that you're misrepresenting yourself. And I was like, what? Misrepresenting myself? I'm triple boarded in dermatology, pathology, dermatopathology. It's all over my diplomas. It's all over my walls. Like, what are you talking about? And it was the first time I was like, ooh, I'm going somewhere. Because the people next door that had been around for a long time were threatened by me. And I know exactly who they were. And it was ironic because my dear friend was the president of whoever, I'm not going to give names, but was the president of an organization. And I knew him. And he goes, Gretchen, I know you're fine and you are fine. And he's like, just send over what we need. And so I sent photos of my diplomas and everything else. And they're like, case dismissed. But to tell you, I sat paralyzed in a chair for 6 hours, staring at a wall. Like, what am I doing? Because everything I've worked for, everything you do in medical school, you do with
Yeah.
purpose. You swear on that oath. You know you're doing the right thing. I've always followed the rules. And all I wanted here was to create something and do big, big things. And someone came after me. I was like, wow. So then I started thinking, I'm like, wait, I'm a triple boarded dermatopathologist. I kept saying that to myself. And when I saw my diplomas, because you start to think like, oh, it's just normal. Like it's just a normal thing. Da 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 da. No, this isn't normal. And then I think it was 6 months later, I had a colleague friend of mine, several actual pathology trained dermatopathologists that saw what I was doing. And I was still in my extreme infancy at that time. They wanted to know how I did it. They were like, we're curious about aesthetics. I want to know how you did it. I want to get involved. And at that time, I would offer information to anyone, and I still do, but it's a little bit in a different way. And I wanted to help them. They tried it. It didn't work out for them. But I realized, whoa, not only do people want to do this that are from my background, but I'm like, wow, I'm really accelerating here. There's something, I have something special to give to the world. And it wasn't telling myself I'm perfect and amazing and da da. No, it was just like, there's something special in me. There's something unique. And so then, I started getting asked to speak at conferences. And I think the first one, I don't know if it was the first Aesthetic Next, but one of the first conferences I talked about the dermatopathology of injectables. It had never been talked about before. And now it's kind of all over the place, but I still am one of the spearheaders of this topic. It had never been talked about before. And then it really opened everyone's eyes and everybody saw this unique perspective. And that's really how it developed. And then, just understanding the power of the way I have thought about things. So my skincare company actually, so speaking of just kind of getting thrown something in your face, like a speed bump or like a big stop sign, my skincare company was called Sonier. And when I started it, it was Sonyer. And it was my two kids. So it was Madison, Son, and Sawyer, Yer. And I put them together and I was like, I'm going to make a skincare company and this is going to be the name. And fast forward to now, I had a third kid. So it makes sense that I had to change the name because it wouldn't have been fair, right? So a huge, enormous company that makes TVs, and I can't say the name out loud, came after this teeny tiny company that I started with my two kids' names going together. And I was like, whoa, what have I created here? Like, why would somebody come after me? So it's all of these little things. And this is the confident optimist, Audrey. I don't look at those as, yes, of course, at the beginning with the first example, I was stopped and shunned. I was just shocked. But I'm like, bring it on. Bring it on. If this is going to happen to me, this means I'm here for a purpose. So yeah, maybe that's the confident optimism that's a little dangerous. I don't know.
I don't think it's dangerous. I think it's to be envious of, truly. And just listening to your story and how, first of all, going back to the medical board thing, like how you said that was so paralyzing for you. Like I can't even imagine. Like,
oh my God, I started sweating just talking about it.
Because just like you said, you work for your whole life to get into that position. And in some crazy scenario, if something gets stripped away, it's like, I can't even imagine. But obviously you did everything by the book. You're a rule follower, just like you said. But in the midst of all that, while you were, contemplating everything, and I really can't imagine what would have been going through your head. I love how it ended, because when you think about it, was just someone that was threatened by you, and that's the effort that they tried to go through to come after you, and how it was obviously dismissed once, obviously nothing was wrong in that situation. And then so you're like, okay, I'm doing something cool. Yeah. And then fast forward another couple of years, let's say you have something else crazy happen to you. We all know the company that would have been that. I thought of it right away when you said it. And yeah, companies that big, they constantly have people like scanning the internet for anything.
Oh, totally.
Their lawyers are looking for any little thing to come after people. So the fact that they even found your tiny little skincare company is impressive on their attorney side.
Yeah.
But obviously it
So
worked
they
out.
even dictated, what I could name my company, right? It couldn't be those four letters together because they own the global rights to these letters together. And I was like, wow, okay. Again, bring it on. Like, I'm going to find another name. And now it's Sawyer, which people call it Sawyer, which is my boy's name, Sawyer. So I'm like, okay, that's amazing. The skincare company sounds like my one boy. It all makes sense.
No, I love it. It all worked out. It's interesting when you look back on things and how all of life's moments, mostly unexpected for the majority of us, all lead us to where we're actually meant to be in the long run. And at the present time, we obviously don't know that. But when you go a couple years further into the future and then you sit down and take a look back and just reflect on all of these little moments or things or tragedies or something that happened that had you doubt yourself or you didn't know how you were going to make it through it. It's interesting when you go back and you're like, no, everything was supposed to lead me to where I am today. And I certainly believe that, given that you are an extreme or a confident optimist. I love that. I love that term. I feel like I'm going to make the title of this podcast.
Confident optimist.
I love it. Oh, there you go. Or the book title. Like I love that. And just knowing you, like that is who you are. And that is something that obviously you're highly successful, but something that separates really successful people from, or just successful from like ultra successful, are the people that have this insane drive in them where nothing is ever going to be good enough. Like they always want to strive for more. And I feel like that's certainly how you are. And I love just hearing your story. And there's so many things I want to go into now.
Well, I'll just add to that. So, it's just so interesting because you do have to have the grit, the grind, everything that's behind closed doors that people don't see, being up till 3 a.m., creating my own social media content. And I'll also never forget. So Dr. Laura Devgan had a conference. She's now since she doesn't do the conference anymore, but that was one of the first ones I went to. And I wanted her to know who I was. And she was like, oh, I know who you are. You've branded yourself on Instagram as this girl who just has her logo all over her Instagram. I should post this. On mine. And you just put yourself on your logo in a photo, like I did this on Canva, and you just hop around your logo with different poses all the time. And I was like, yeah, that's actually who it is. And I had pink hair. So the bottom of my hair, it was blonde, but I had light pink tips on my hair. And people knew me because of that. So it's how do you make yourself unique and interesting? But yeah, I mean, people don't see the grit, the grind, the drive, and the amount of time it takes to put together everything. And then you soon realize you can't do it all, right? And then you get into okay, I need a team. And how do I find this team? And how do I find these people that mean so much to me? And now, sometimes I wonder if my team is like, how did she do this? Because she doesn't have a brain left. but when you start to give control to other people who then you allow and create growth on their end, you're allowed to relax a little bit and you make the bigger decisions. You don't make all the small decisions. You just make the big ones. And that's where I am now. And I'll tell you, I cannot believe, we just had our 7-year anniversary. And I think it was within the last year and a half that everything transformed. And I don't make the decisions anymore. And I have a team that believes in my company and brands more than I sometimes believe in them. I never thought it was possible. How do you have these people that see what you're doing, see the growth? And I have a lot of ways that I've done that. And number one of those ways is transparency, right? I never shared, numbers with my team or things like that. And now I do. So it's been incredible.
I love that. And so there's two things I want to go into now that you brought that up. So the first thing, if I rewind, because I want to stop on this really quickly before I go into team building, because that's something I do want to talk about. But when we go back to how you were saying, behind closed doors, there's all of these things that people don't see. And you said something specifically, staying up till 3 a.m. doing your social media. Mm-hmm. So I want to stop on this.
Imagine that.
Because social media it's a lot of work. And in the modern world of aesthetics, it's something that you have to do. And I think sometimes when it like, because people say all the time, like, oh, social media is free. And I really despise when people say that, because no one's time is free in this
Mm-hmm.
industry, especially if you're a medical provider and you're running a multi-location business. So on the social media topic too, because I know a lot of our listeners are gonna want to hear this, and I want to hear this too, because you pump out a lot of content. Like, you're posting multiple times per day. So if we talk about, like, how did you start your social media, and like what have been some of the things that have made it the most successful, I think that that's something a lot of us would actually love to hear.
Yeah. So I'm not going to, dwell on the beginnings of it, but you have to start somewhere, period.
Yeah.
It's a non-negotiable. If you want your practice to succeed, you must do it. And it's going to be rocky at the beginning, period. Um, so Kaylee's sitting here, who's now essentially, she's my director of operations. She runs my companies, but she started in my house as my babysitter, as a marketing major in the business school at UMass. And I was like, this woman is so special. And so, this was after I had slaved away until 3 a.m. on Canva, teaching it to myself, trying to figure this out. And I do think there's a fine line. You have to have a balance between professionalism and authenticity, because a lot of people talk about authenticity, but I didn't want my social media to be so authentic and raw. Well, by the way, at that time, I wasn't ready to share any of that, right? I just needed people to see who I was. But you have to have professionalism, because now we see all this unprofessional behavior. So I wasn't there for that. So what is your message, right? Create your message. And I did it myself. I did it myself, number one, because I wanted to learn how to do it myself. So then, as a control freak, I could tell someone else how to do it the way I wanted to do it, right? That was my natural next step. My natural next step was not, let's hire a marketing professional to do this for me. I did not do that. And a lot of people do that. And that's wonderful. But it creates a different thing. I wanted to do it. So I then hired Kaylee, who came on as my social media person. She would help me create content, but I still wanted to control it, and I posted it myself. And I grew and I grew and I grew. And I will tell you, I paid so much money to boost my posts. And I knew it wasn't financially smart, because Facebook's much cheaper, but I didn't have a following on Facebook, really. I wanted Instagram. Hundreds of thousands of dollars to boost my posts, to get them seen. And in retrospect, I'm like, that's stupid, because I'm trying to grow a practice and I want people to see it locally. But you can fine tune where you boost it and who sees it. And it did. I started showing up. So Kaylee helped me create the content. I still posted it. And then it, started going where I would do like Instagram lives. I'd show myself getting ready in the morning with my skincare. I would create more authenticity. I'd be on there talking more and being raw and open and honest about my background. And people, that's another time where people are like, wow, you're so unique. You are so smart. You're talking about the ingredients and you're talking about the way things work versus just injecting people. And that was when I was also getting that reassurance with how unique my background was. So then I transitioned forward and I hired a woman, Rachel. She's still with me. She's incredible, who helps create content, because one of my problems was I want to grow my practice and I want new injectors here, but they're not comfortable posting on social media. So I want to create a brand that's not around me. Well, too bad, lady. It is around you. And we're getting past that now. I think with location 3, it'll be more of a brand name. I'll still be part of it. But how do I do that? You cannot force people to post on social media. No matter how much you pay them, it doesn't matter. They don't feel comfortable doing it. We are in a field that's a medical field, but it's a social media field, period. So how do I do that? I think I've now come up with a secret sauce of how to incentivize people to do it. But I had Rachel here creating content. She would be like, let's just film this. She'd tell them, she'd give them a script. Read this. I just want to take a photo of you, or do this. It was still hard. It was still pulling teeth because people didn't feel comfortable. Whole social media calendar. And, so I pump out a lot of content now because Rachel will film it of me, and I'm still very eager to get on there and have a lot of things to post. So it's skincare, it's podcasts, it's all the things I'm in. But she'll create content for me and the team. She puts it in a Google Drive each week, and people take those clips and we'll post it on their Instagram. The other way that we integrate it now is that we have extremely competitive pay. Our injectors get paid so much. And now we have incentivized them with a monthly bonus that incorporates social media. So you hit a financial goal and you bring a certain amount of revenue into our practice each month, but you must hit certain social media goals, period. And it's like, wow, that took how many years for me to figure that out? But it has changed the game. It's created this beautiful, healthy competition. Like, did I hit my goal? Did I hit my goal? Each month. It's so much fun. And the goals are actually attainable. We can hit them. They're not something that's completely so far out of the park that it doesn't work. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, you did, and I have a couple more.
Okay.
So the compensation thing, because that's brilliant actually, because that's something we hear all the time. I mean, I hear it every day. It's like, how do I get my team members involved in my social media? Because just like you said at the beginning, it's very rare that you're going to get someone that's like, oh yeah, I want to be on social media and do all this stuff. Like it is like pulling teeth, and it takes time. So I want to go. I just have a question around the compensation. Like, what are the social goals? Like, is it they have to hit a number of like content pieces that they film on a monthly basis, or I'm just curious around what that looks like?
It's posts. So it's posts and stories. And they have to do a certain number of posts and a certain number of stories. What is the number, Kaylee?
It's 12 posts,
12.
in-feed posts per month, and then 30 story posts per month.
30 stories a month and 12 wall posts, in-feed posts a month. And it's attainable. I mean, 12 is pretty much every other day. And the reason why it's attainable is we're feeding it to you. Yep. This is what I didn't understand at the beginning. I was like, I'm not even asking you to just get on your phone and film something. I have someone that I've hired who's extremely intelligent, brilliant, amazing, who will feed it to you. They'll tell you what to do. She'll come up with the ideas. She'll film you. She'll put it in a folder, and all you have to do is actually put it on your Instagram. How is that hard? And I was like, what am I missing here? And I was missing, you also want your injectors to feel like it's them. Mm-hmm. So I was almost creating something that maybe they didn't relate to as much. I'm not sure. But now it's this beautiful blend of, they meet with Rachel once a month, ideally, to go through content ideas. And there is a calendar that she holds them to. And she has them send her their stats on their Instagram every month so she can just help. I mean, we're here to help each other. And now they know, not only are they then incentivized to get an additional monthly bonus, but it brings them patience. And I posted on mine, it's all of the things. But you do want to make sure that you feel as though you're empowering them and they think it's authentic to them. And on the flip side, right, I own their Instagram accounts. The company does, right? Owns all of their Instagram accounts. And whatever they create during the company's time, money, resources, energy, employees is not and will not ever be used if they leave the company, which is so incredibly important. I do not understand how small, quote unquote, small businesses exist and facilitate that. And then people can just take the content. It doesn't make any sense to me. So where's the fine line there? But now the brand has structure and it's recognizable because not only can you see the authenticity and the uniqueness of each injector, but they are tied together with one common thread. G-Face.
Yeah, no, fascinating. And
we should do a panel together on social media at some conference. It'd be really fun.
I would love that. I think that would be so much fun because we'll probably have to do a part 2 on this episode too, because just looking at the time, there's no way that we'll get through all the stuff I want to get through, which is all good because I could talk to you for hours.
Let's do it. We can do it next week.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. So moving back, so I want to touch on a couple of things. So I love how you articulated it, and it's with the social media, the goals and things like that, and that there's a bonus structure in place, which I find brilliant. But at the end of the day, you're empowering them as well, and it all goes back to like that a brand goes beyond just you. Like obviously you are the face of the brand, you are G-Face, but when it comes to growing and developing and building and scaling a brand and a business, that takes a lot more than just a single person. So even to go back to at the beginning of the episode when you were talking about your team and how that they are so bought into your practice, and in some cases like they're more bought in than you are sometimes. I remember that part specifically because when I heard that, I was thinking to myself, like, that is the epitome of building a really incredible team culture is when your team, your staff members, your injectors, they are so bought into your business, and in some cases more than you do, because I feel like even when it comes to, like, if we want to start talking about staff retention and all of these things, it's usually all boils down to a common denominator, and it's culture and how they feel. Are they contributing to something bigger than themselves, and are they bought into that? So on the team building thing now, because this kind of leads into that, how many team members do you actually have across both your locations?
12 right now.
12. Okay.
Really. Yeah.
That's a decent number of people. So I want to go into, and this will probably take us.
I will say I have several rock stars, my admin team. It's 3 to 4 people, which equals 20 people. Like, that's how rock star they are. I mean, these people, I've never seen anything like in my life. Yeah.
How do you find people like this? Because I feel like when it comes to like admin positions too, like, and I see you laughing and smiling. Obviously, you're there in the room, but like that's hard, like to find someone and then to train them and then to have them stick with you for years and years and years. Like that's hard for a lot of business owners in this industry. So if you have any pearls around that, I think that'd be cool to hear.
And this is just ridiculous. And this is why I have to write a book, because my secret sauce is ridiculous, but it's babysitters. I'm not even kidding. I never understood what it meant to hire slowly. It made no sense. I go to LinkedIn. I'm like, okay, I need an admin person. I need help. Go to LinkedIn. It's all these people that have had all these huge COO roles, CFO, whatever it is. I, as a small company, can't afford to pay somebody $500,000 5 years ago. And I also don't think that I would get along with someone like that. And when you bring someone into a company like that, where I was the direct connection to all of my injectors, it's going to create a weird dynamic. So how do you do this? I'm telling you, I did not know how. I really didn't know how. And I still don't know how I've become so quote unquote lucky. I don't believe in luck. The book, The Luck Factor, is amazing because everything you do in your life, all of the connections create the ability to be lucky. I'm so beyond fortunate. The woman I mentioned before, Kaylee, was a babysitter for me, and this was what it means with Hire Slowly. She worked with me through college for 4 years, doing my payroll from Barcelona, and then has now come in and directs the entire corporation, all of them. And we have gotten to know each other through time, but it's not about even that. It's that she is a rock star. She is brilliant. She never misses a detail. She is always available, which I very much respect her time, but always available. Has seen growth that no one else has seen within 4 years. And here we are. The best part of that is that people in my company, even people that aren't with me anymore, have known who she is. So she's not just showing up now in person after graduation. Yeah. She's been around for a long time. So that was a secret sauce that if you have the ability to have someone part-time for a while and really get to know them and grow with you, that is the best way. But I know that's not always possible.
Right.
So then I have really learned from my mistakes. Again, it's cliche, but you learn what you don't want, and then you know what you really want and need. And you have to go through the process. You have to see what happens. You have to see how people act. You have to see how people take advantage of you and they mistreat you. I've sat in my office and had to let people go who've screamed at me, who have stolen from me. I have had people tell me they're giving their 2 weeks, and it's created a cascade effect because people form little cliques in your office if you don't have a healthy culture, which has happened to me. And then they all quit. And, again, I sit there and then I see them on somebody else's social media that they've gone to another med spa. And my heart sinks because the first thing I think of is, oh my gosh, everything I've done for that person. Well, now I know that's not the right way to think about it. But, oh my gosh, like what I did for this person, I threw them this party and I did this for them. And like, they have no idea how much I sacrificed to pay them the amount of money I paid them. And they didn't even bring me any revenue because it takes a year. But that was my problem and my thinking and how much I learned from that. They weren't the right person. Again, confident optimist. They're not here anymore because they're not meant to be here. Period. Move on. So then I got to this point where I truly believe character is number one. And I'm sure you've heard this before. You can train somebody to do anything technical. I can train anyone who will hold a syringe and inject it. You hire on character and work ethic. But how do you know those things without really knowing somebody? Well, it was about a year and a half ago, and these people just started coming into my life, these really incredible people that wanted to be in aesthetics. And we get resumes all the time. But it was just this hurricane of sorts of, whoa, like I can't let that one go, and I can't let that one go. And they're just incredible. So no normal person does this. Again, extreme optimist. I hire 6 injectors at one time. 5 injectors at one time. Okay. Not normal. Normal people hire and then train one. They get up and running. After a year, they start bringing in money. But no, I was like, I can't lose this one. I can't lose this one. And then knowing that I want a second location, well, I'm just going to build and build and build so I can have them at the second location. And I knew I was taking a risk. And there was just this funny thing in my head. At a year mark, I would always have people feel like wobbly, injectors specifically, and support staff at a year. I would lose them. I don't know why. I don't know why I would lose them. Maybe it was because there was a disconnect in support and perceived support. So they weren't really ready to inject or be on their own. But I thought after being here for a year, you're ready. And so I kind of let go a little bit, but I think they felt like they lost support. And this is after a lot of reflection. So I would lose people at a year, and now it's, knock on wood, they're all over a year that they've been here, and the practice is exploding. But I don't think anybody normal should do that. I think you have to hire for the personality.
Yeah.
And then it comes. And then recently, through an incredible colleague, Dr. Weiner, his daughter, and this is where the babysitter theme comes in. His daughter, Sydney, was a babysitter for me. She was building and developing preschools and daycares in the Boston area. And I met her with her dad and her mom at a conference up here a couple years ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, you want to come babysit? I'd love that. So she spent a couple of days with my kids. It was amazing. Fast forward to this year earlier, and I get this text message from Sydney. And it was about, she wanted to expand and grow and build, and she wanted to join GFACE MD. And I was like, oh my gosh. And of course, thinking about Steve and how much of a mentor he's been to me, and knowing how much I love Sydney. And obviously you have to be concerned about getting too close to home, and you want to make sure you can take care of people and whatever. But so now she is exploding in my company, running my conference and the whole training platform. I mean, it's just explosive because she is brilliant. So I guess my answer is, and conclusion to all of it is, first of all, you have to enjoy the process. You have to enjoy the journey. You have to know that you're doing this because you want to do it, and you're going to get hiccups, and they're going to teach you something, and you're going to move on, because at the end of the day, you have to be okay running your company alone. I say right now, I actually am very scared about it, because if everyone left me tomorrow and I was alone, I'm not sure I could do it. I could see patients, but you have to be okay taking control if something happens, and you have to take risks, and you have to learn from your mistakes, period. That was a lot.
I love it. And we'll put a pin in this, and we'll just continue with the part 2, because I want to go deeper into this topic now. Okay. So this was part 1.
Yeah, now we're already done.
I love it. It was funny because when Gretchen first popped on, and I'm like, yeah, we'll go to the top of the hour because she's a patient. She's like, you think? I'm like, oh yeah, we definitely will. But I love it. And I love to to just reiterate how you ended it. You have to enjoy the process, do everything with a purpose and with intention. And yeah, you're going to have to take risks. There's going to be hiccups along the way. And those things are opportunities for you to learn and grow. And if you don't have those things happen to you, you'll never grow. So I think that those are just good things that every business owner or aspiring, aesthetic provider in the space that listens to this podcast should always keep in mind. So Gretchen, well, obviously all of our listeners can stay tuned for a part 2, but thank you for joining me for part 1. I love you so much. You are just love being around you. just, you radiate positivity, which I told you before, but it's something that you certainly do. So I just want to say thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. And I feel the same about you. You mean so much to me. I love just this platform and getting to know each other so much better. I mean, we obviously clicked right when we met each other, but you are so fantastic, incredible, brilliant, and such a go-getter. And we have so much in common, but we can both, I think, learn from each other as well. And I love you hearing my story, and I love hearing yours. So
I love it.